a prayer call for our sisters across the globe in our struggle. Thank you.
If you want more light, you can have more light.
I've been asked to come here and talk about pornography and how we can address pornography directly in schools. And I just wanted to say a little bit about where I'm coming from on this. I've worked in the field of sexual health and teenage pregnancy now with young people for over 20 years, developing services, developing education programs and looking at policies and what have you. And I think working with the practitioners that I do, what we're seeing now is more and more concern about pornography in terms of what young people are saying to us in the clinics that I work in and sort of the people who are doing the outreach work, and the impact that pornography is actually having on them, their self-esteem and their relationships. So I also put it within that context because I also think there's a huge amount of moralism about young people and sex, and I want to very much differentiate ourselves from that and say that we're very much positive about sex and young people's right to sexual health education and their right to express their sexuality however it is. But I think we do need to start looking at the problems that pornography is creating in this for young people. I also think we need to acknowledge that porn has been around for a very long time. Generations of young people have used pornography to educate themselves about sex, to educate themselves about biology and bodies, and also for some young people, particularly young gay people, as a way of affirming, and maybe sometimes the only affirmation that they get, because of where they live or the education that they're not getting, around their right to be gay and their sexuality. So I think it is there. But I think porn has actually has changed qualitatively. I think there's a whole argument about porn, but I think what we're talking about today and what I want to talk about is the porn that we are seeing today that young people are accessing. And so when I talk about porn, and most people are talking about porn in this field, we're actually talking about what is known as hardcore porn. So it's porn that always features explicit acts of penetration. And mostly what's out there on the internet that young people are very easily able to access, and I have tried this because I didn't want to come and tell you something that wasn't true, and I don't recommend it. Really don't recommend some of those images. I really don't wish I had those in my head. So what they are seeing is very, very explicit. It's known as gonzo porn. Now this is porn that has no plot, no storyline. It's very cheap to make, and it's wall-to-wall sex acts. There was a study done that showed that 88% of porn, of the top-rated porn, the top-rated or downloaded porn, actually features acts of aggression, verbal aggression, physical aggression. It predominantly features several men and one woman. It involves penetration everywhere possible, often at the same time. It often results in women gagging, and I think as those of you who saw Bevan's film there, it usually ends with the money shot, which is an ejaculation in the woman's face. So I think it says a lot about the position of women in pornography and what young people are watching. In pornography, in this type of pornography, the more aggressive, the better, and it very much blurs boundaries between consent and abuse. There is no consent in porn. Women never say no to anything, and as I said, the more aggressive, the more they actually enjoy it. When we look at who is accessing this porn and why, it's not a question of if young people are actually seeing porn, it's a question of when they are going to see it, because many young people are actually seeing porn and they haven't actually gone looking for it. It is actually just appearing, and a lot of them actually are quite distressed by it. It's very difficult to get statistics, but the statistics I have come from a very good programme that was done in 2009 that you get a chance to find it, you can, on Channel 4, Sex Education versus Pornography. And what it showed that 2/3 of 13 to 17-year-olds said they had viewed pornography. The average age of first seeing pornography is 11 years old, and this comes from the UK Council for Child Internet Safety. Now remember, this is hardcore porn that they're seeing. 1/3 of young people said that they had learned about sex and women's bodies from pornography, and the average teenager is watching 90 minutes of pornography a week. So it's out there, you know what I mean? It is really something that young people are seeing and saying. So I'm going to run over time. Okay. So, why? Why are young people accessing porn? And again, there's very, very little research on this, but what there is, and it's backed up anecdotally, and certainly what we're hearing about in the schools and the clinics, is that a lot of young people are accessing porn to find out about sex and the mechanics of sex, especially boys. Boys are very interested in the how-to They want to know what you have to do and how to do it, and they do that from quite a young age. So gaining tips about sex, they want to learn about the physiology of male and female body, and also to gain arousal, and that can be individual or in a group. So there's lots of reasons why young people are accessing porn. And as I said before, there is a real thing, I think, about recognition of sexuality, of your own sexuality within pornography. There's a very big gender divide in porn, and research shows that girls tend to be much more critical and view porn as degrading, hardly surprising when we think about what's out there. But actually this is beginning to change, and I think there's a question about how much this is changing because it is actually what girls want, and how much of it's changing because actually what girls are being subjected to is constant images, not just through pornography, but also through pop culture or just mainstream culture. So they're under a peer pressure to actually say that that is also what they want to do. And I think there is a real view that if you're anti-porn, or you think there's a problem with porn, then you're also anti-sex. And I think we have to be really hard on those arguments, which is why I want to say that we need to be very sex positive in our approach with young people around this. So why does it matter? Young people have always been looking at porn in some ways, and I think, again, there's not a lot of research on this, but looking at it internationally, what there is, that we're looking at the impact on young people who are starting to develop, just beginning to develop their sense of who they are, what their sexuality is, what sort of a man they're going to be, what sort of a woman they're going to be. They're too young. They don't actually have any real experience themselves to be making decisions about this. But porn is beginning to shape their view of what it is to be a man and a woman, what it is to be in a relationship, what is the type of sex that you can expect. There's a little bit, in terms of the research and association, that the more porn use that young people have, there's a greater acceptance of stereotyped and sexist notions of gender and gender roles. It promotes a view of what we call a hypermasculinity in men, which is in boys, which is very unrealistic views for them on what they should be able to do, which again we then see in our clinics in terms of their self-esteem and their anxiety about their bodies, and also about their performance and how they should be able to have sex, but also very, very unrealistic views on what they can expect their girlfriends to do. So remember, in porn, girls never say no to anything. So really unrealistic, and the pressure then that goes on girls with that. For girls, as I said, there's a pressure to behave and perform in acts that they don't want to, and consent is a big issue. And again, this is something we're seeing. You know, girls come in to see us because they want contraception, they want pregnancy tests, whatever it is. They don't come in to talk to us about porn, but it comes out in the consultations that they are often engaging in sexual acts actually they're not that comfortable or happy with, but they don't really know how to begin to say no. 60% of teenagers have said that porn has had an impact on their sex lives. And there is some evidence that consumption of porn is associated with more sexually aggressive attitudes towards women, and more of a view that it is actually okay to hold girls down. It is okay, it is all right just to touch them when they don't want to be touched. Okay, sorry, I'm going some. So porn doesn't exist in its own bubble. It very much has to be seen within a continuum of the sexualisation of mainstream culture. And it's very much a very poor educator of young people. We cannot allow the education of our young people to be left to the pornographers. It is very, very big business. And I just want to talk about this a little bit, because it does not exist in some shady, seedy, hidden part of the world. Porn is well integrated into mainstream capitalism and global capitalism. A lot of the mobile phone technology that we use, that's so brilliant in terms of streaming videos, all of that, that was researched and developed by the pornographers, because how better to increase your consumer base by making sure that everybody who wants to can download their own bit of porn. You're not reliant on your computer at home that your mum might see you using. They want to increase their market share, and there's actually a quote in a book that I've got here from one of the big pornographers who talks about that. He says, "We are just like any other capitalist Fortune 500 company. People focus on the content, but we are actually about our market share and our consumer base." And if that means pushing the boundaries more in order to get a bigger market share, in order to have more consumers, then they will do that. So we will see some harder, more aggressive, but more challenging pornography in order to attract people, because it actually is desensitizing as well. There's an element of watching all of this, you become desensitized to what is actually really quite aggressive. So what can we do? Really quickly, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time here. They're not, as I've said, as I think hopefully I've demonstrated, they are not in the slightest interested in improving our sex lives, our children's sex lives, in actually making us more liberated. They are just more interested in commodifying sex and selling it to us and turning us into consumers. So what can we do about that is, well, we can't ban it. just not going to happen. It's so out there. But however, I think, and I think lots of people have talked about that, young people are not just big sponges that actually just take on board everything that's said to them uncritically. They are well able to critically engage with what they're seeing through mass media. And I think our role as educators, as parents, is actually to help them with the tools to do that. And there are many, many ways to do that. There is quite a lot of evidence around this. And I have to say the beginnings of this, sort of my work really, is the building blocks is good SRE in your school. So if you've got SRE running through from primary to secondary, it actually gives you a forum within which you can begin to discuss these issues, and you don't have to take on gonzo porn. There's enough out there in mainstream pop culture for you to get them to start analysing what it means and understanding that. So that's your building blocks. You can then also start getting them to engage, and so I just very quickly say this, as Richard was saying, around the importance of understanding women's oppression. There is actually evidence out there that actually the more young people understand equality, have an understanding of oppression and human rights and all of those issues, they are better able to mediate the impact that pornography has on them.